Genshin's history has always been plagued by mysteries about the unknown universes and hidden cities, especially with one of its biggest plot points being the one ancient civilization that was allegedly wrongfully punished several centuries ago. Today, I want to break down that very civilization before it came to ruin, and why it might not be as benevolent as one might think. Welcome to Khaenri'ah Before the Fall, where I'll be dissecting the cultural inspirations and possible details about the city. I won't be diving into the Cataclysm itself, as I'm only interested in Khaenri'ah before the Cataclysm. But before that, this video was brought to you by Opera GX. Opera GX is the first ever browser built specifically for gamers. This is my personal browser of use, and honestly it's helped me so much whenever I try to play Genshin and research for these videos. God bless they have the YouTube mini player because I only have one monitor. One thing I never really liked about other browsers was that they need you to download a third-party program just to customize. Well, luckily Opera GX comes with amazing customization, with animated wallpapers and different themes. They also come in a light and dark mode. One of my favorite parts about their browser is the forced dark mode setting for websites that don't have it built in. They also have a GX corner on the side that helps you stay up to date with free games, the best deals, new releases, and gaming news. Speaking of gaming, as someone that edits a lot of videos and plays Genshin, my PC can only handle so much. This was something I had to deal with when using other browsers. Well, Opera GX comes with GX Control, a panel on your browser that helps enhance the performance of your PC when gaming with your browser open. This panel lets users limit the amount of CPU or RAM they're willing to let the browser use. Opera GX also comes with a network bandwidth limiter, so you never have to worry about it lagging when you're watching a stream or playing browser games. Also, Opera GX is available on mobile, so go right ahead. Download Opera GX by clicking the link below, and thank you to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. The Kingdom of Khaenri'ah is an underground nation from 500 years ago. The nation was known for its advanced artificial weapons and mechanical creatures, and even to this day, we still see remnants of those mechanical creatures in Teyvat, suggesting that maybe Khaenri'ah itself had more control over the Seven's territory than we first expected. The nation was also known for advanced alchemy and pursued knowledge about the many different worlds in the known universe, as evidenced by not only the Khemia world quest, but also the alchemist named Gold who conducted her own research into the world's mysteries. The nation itself was purged 500 years ago after the alchemist named Gold became corrupted by her own greed and ambition, allegedly destroying the main ruling body of Khaenri'ah and releasing the black soil monsters into the nation. This in turn caused Celestia to retribute against the monsters and purge the nation. Unfortunately, as divine retribution, the people of Khaenri'ah were turned into the monsters of the Abyss, thus bringing forth the Abyss Order. Khaenri'ah was an underground realm, and its natural fauna were few and far between. I would say that it has the same structure as Khemia, in which any heavenly body seen in Khaenri'ah might be artificially created. While they are underground, it's possible that they also made a way to mimic the day and night cycle. According to Albedo's character Story 5, there was little natural life in Khaenri'ah, which in turn caused the people to turn to alchemy. The creation of life was a focus in Khaenri'ah sciences, and this is known as the art of Khemia. The word Khemia is where the word alchemy comes from, and refers to transmutation of matter. There's no real known process of how Khemia is practiced, but from what we can imply, it's the improvement of other materials and the refinement of the elements into something better. Plant-like motifs to symbolize ancient knowledge is used in both lore of the ancient civilizations and Albedo's characterizations. Albedo's master created a branch when she was showing Albedo the art of Khemia, similar to how Albedo showcased his abilities to the traveler in the same way. The people of Khaenri'ah may have come from the time humanity itself was created, but that may not have been as benevolent, all things considered. In the book Before the Sun and Moon, there was a great catastrophe when something known as the Second Throne came down to this world. The Second Throne and Celestia waged war on one another. People from ancient civilizations fled underground to avoid the calamity happening in the surface world, but when the war ended, they were banned from returning to the surface world for unknown reasons. And Khemia's people were also left to wander the Dark Sea alone for years, so I don't doubt that Khaenri'ah, for how ancient they also were, was left to the same fate, given that they are an underground nation. They also had to adapt using biomimetics. Since Khaenri'ah was devoid of natural animals and whatnot, it's possible that they decided to create their own. According to the lore, these are machines that resembled insects and animals, and their designs contributed a lot to the study of biomimesis. Biomimetics is the emulation of the models, systems, and elements of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. The Ruin Scouts resemble aquatic life. The Ruin Destroyers resembled a weird, frightening plant almost similar to the leyline flowers. The Ruin Cruiser was designed after honeybee colonies, and the Ruin Defenders had multiple limbs like an insect. The Perpetual Mechanical Array also resembles the Hypostasis. You use nature as a framework, see how nature works with its own characteristics, and use that knowledge to mimic that characteristic to help you in your everyday life. The story of Khaenri'ah is pretty interesting, given that most of the texts imply that the Cataclysm was an undeserved destruction of a prosperous nation, but there are hints that there might be more than what NPCs say about Khaenri'ah's fall, specifically that they had an idea of conquest and defiance of the Seven even from the very beginning. First is how Dainsleif warns the traveler not to lean too far on both sides.
You shouldn't place too much trust in them, but at the same time, don't go too far in the opposite direction. Don't go trying to overthrow them or hunt them down, even if the god in question is your sworn enemy.
Don't trust them and don't hunt them. That's some awkward advice. Does Dane hate the Seven, or is he protecting them?
Lest I repeat the failings of my forebears.
The artifact set Pale Flame also speaks of a foolish ruler that fell to sin, so it's possible that Khaenri'ah was diving into forbidden territory that bordered on blasphemy. Whatever the foolish ruler and the scholars did ushered in a tide of divine retribution. In Enkanomiya, we see that they were searching for a book called Before the Sun and Moon, a book that details the past of Celestia before coming to this world. The Abyss Order currently wants to prove that Celestia isn't from this world, but even from 500 years ago, Khaenri'ah wanted to prove that fact. But second is the abundance and spread of Khaenri'ah technology on the surface world. While some Ruin machines wandered there after Khaenri'ah's fall, and even some were researched formally by surface world dwellers, most of the Khaenri'ah technology that arrived in the surface world were militaristic in nature, serving no real purpose besides being machines of war. The field tillers were examples of that. The Ruin guards were thought to not only be machines of war, but as protectors of the ruins. But this doesn't explain why they have explosive weaponry inside the very ruins they're supposed to protect. Pile that up with the explanation that Dainsleif gives, that the Ruin guards were meant to be weapons. The Ruin Hunter was also created to improve on the weaponry aspect of the Ruin machines. Apparently, the creators opted to forego the low-performing humanoid design in pursuit of improved combat effectiveness. The other Ruin machines that I mentioned were also biometrically manipulated to become more combat-oriented, which is interesting. Like the Ruin Defender's insect-like structure was made to combat frontal attacks, while the Ruin Cruiser's honeybee comb structure made for more omnidirectional laser weaponry. It's a weird thing to think of. Why are so many weapons of mass destruction scattered across Teyvat? If we follow the structure of the Abyss Order, we can see that there are hierarchies in the Kingdom of Khaenri'ah in terms of professions. It's unknown if the professions of the Abyss reflect their own system, but it's safe to assume that there's a kind of structure in the old history of Khaenri'ah even before the Cataclysm and the creation of the Abyss Order. So let's dissect that. The Abyss Mages were described as foot soldiers, hence they might have the same ranking as civilians or entry-level military units. Think of them as the disposable Fatui agents. Pyro-Abyss Lectors are known as scholars in the past, librarians who were in charge of deciphering ancient texts and translating lost languages. The Electro-Abyss Lectors are evangelists, most likely similar to Barbara, which is interesting, by the way. For a nation that has no god or never believed in a god, why would there be evangelists? If the evangelists came before the Cataclysm, who are they preaching to? The Void? And if they came after the Cataclysm, would they consider the Abyss as an entity worth preaching about? Well, we'll discuss that later. The Electro-Abyss are also known as scholars, so both Abyss Lectors relate to something academic. And last is the Abyss Herald, the vanguard of the Abyss. They were the reason I was considering if the Abyss Order had connection to the roles in the past because of Dainsleif and the Abyss Herald. Not only are their designs similar, but also that they were both vanguards in the past, and Dane was said to be undergoing a similar corruption to him. So that's fascinating. But the hierarchy continues with the ruling body of Khaenri'ah being called a dynasty. The Eclipse Dynasty was the ruling body of Khaenri'ah that fell during the Cataclysm. Given that the Abyss sibling is called either Prince or Princess, the use of King and Queen to talk about the ruler would be applicable. In The Mocking Mask, Piero says that there was a foolish ruler in the ancient civilization, so the kingdom does have a higher figure than the current prince or princess. Which means that maybe the Abyss Order also has one. The nation itself, naming-wise, takes from European mythologies, having influences from Greek, Germanic, and Norse mythologies. Rheindaughtr, or the alchemist Gold, was an intelligent alchemist who allegedly caused the Cataclysm by becoming corrupted by her own ambition. Her names, both Rheindaughtr and Gold, could be a reference to Das Rheingold, the first of the 4 music dramas that constitute Richard Wagner's Der Riss den Nibelungen. The story covers characters from both Germanic heroic legends and sagas. Rheindaughtr is the creator of Albedo and spearheaded the Primordial Human Project, a project that strived to create simulacra and homunculi. Albedo is named after the second stage of creating the Philosopher's Stone. The word albedo is Latin for the whitening, and its predecessor is known as negredo, or the blackening. Negredo might be connected to the black soil mentioned by both Venti and the story of Durin.
How do you explain white chalk and black soil, or the Earth's dense crust amidst the emptiness of space? Same reason the purest soil gave birth to human life. It's an ancient power with unmistakable properties.
Durin was classified as humus, the organic component of soil, formed by the decomposition of leaves and other plant-like material by soil microorganisms. The name of his banner, Secretum Secretorum, is also an important historical piece that is allegedly from Aristotle to his student Alexander the Great. This letter covers a range of topics including statecraft, ethics, physiognomy, astrology, alchemy, magic, and medicine. This reflects well with the last text Rheindaughtr gave to Albedo. The classical text she gave him was one of the last extant manuscripts of the Opus Magnum from his master's collection, and she leaves it behind with him before telling him to find the truth of the world. Another interesting character that derives from the same source material as Rheindaughtr is Kaya Alberic, specifically his last name. Alberic was a dwarf from the Nibelungen that created a ring from the Rheingold. Kaya is a descendant from Khaenri'ah, one who was left behind as a spy. There was a side to Kaya that he kept hidden from the world. In truth, he was an ancient of Khaenri'ah, placed in Mondstadt to serve their interests. His father had abandoned him in the strange unknown land to fulfill this mission, and it was Master Kripus and the city of Mondstadt that welcomed him with open arms when they found him. Durin was a dragon created by Gold that might have been corrupted over the course of his life by the blood venom in his veins. In the end, he died by Barbados and the Valin's hands. In Norse mythologies, both Durin and the Valin are dwarves from the Prose Edda. The Prose Edda is considered the fullest and most detailed source for modern knowledge of Norse mythology, the body of myth for the North Germanic peoples, and draws from a wide variety of sources, including versions of poems that survive into today's collection known as the Poetic Edda. Dainsleif was part of the royal vanguard before the Cataclysm, and he was once known as the Twilight Sword. The name Dainsleif comes from Tchaikovsky's sword, according to Snorri's Truluso. The Saga of Hild is a Germanic heroic legend about a never-ending battle known as such. His title, the Bowkeeper, might also reference the Yggdrasil, or the World Tree in Norse mythology. The Yggdrasil was mentioned in the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, and was a tree at the center of the cosmos. Also, something pretty neat I want to cover is the constellation he was said to have known as the Snake Ring constellation. I have 2 theories what his constellation might be. It's either Ouroboros or Ophiuchus. In Genshin, we hear something called Ouroboros in Khemia, and the people said that the name Ouroboros was a celestial serpent. This celestial serpent is not Orobashi. The location known as Heart of Ouroboros was named even before Orobashi came to Khemia. The Ouroboros is an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail. This is the concept of eternity and endless return. On the other hand, Ophiuchus is the name of the serpent-bearer constellation. It is commonly represented as a man grasping a snake. Its old name is Serpentarius. There's a character named Skirk that taught Tartaglia the way of the foul legacy. It's unknown if she's Khaenri'ah or someone that accidentally fell down there like Tartaglia and learned the way of the foul legacy. We'll just have to wait and see. Dainsleif says that Khaenri'ah didn't have a god, but the lore might hint something much more than simply being godless. Khaenri'ah is a nation without an Archon, but Khaenri'ah might have a divine entity watching over them, and Celestia didn't completely abandon them as opposed to Khemia. One line that always got me curious was Enjo's World Quest dialogue, in which he points out Khemia is a nation that didn't have divine envoys closely watching over them. Given that he's an Abyss Lector, this means that the opposite is true for Khaenri'ah, that they had divine envoys that still watched them closely. The word divine envoys is a reference to the divine envoys that once helped the ancient civilizations prosper. According to the Prayer's artifact set, Once upon a time, the people of the land could hear revelations from Celestia directly. The envoys of the heavens walked among benighted humanity then. The envoys of heaven said that the world would soon enter a new and brighter age. It was until humanity conspired to enter the Garden of the Gods that the divine envoys became angry. In Aster Request Part 2, we receive a somewhat confirmation that Celestia does still keep tabs on Khaenri'ah. The nation was one that the Archons could not ignore, up until the Cataclysm where Makoto had to fight. While Khaenri'ah is an independent nation, it's most likely that Celestia held it to the same regards as the other nations. The pride of humanity was a flourishing kingdom. I can't say that it's out of benevolence, but the safest bet is just out of sheer security. The gods of Celestia are ultimately lawful creatures and are strict even to their own gods. I don't doubt that Celestia would monitor Khaenri'ah. It wouldn't be a good idea as a ruling body to keep a civilization that has advanced weaponry and access to alchemy capable of mimicking human life to its own devices. Because what happens to that nation is exactly what happened 500 years ago.